On a rainy night in 1971, a man in a business suit boarded a passenger plane, ordered a drink, and lit a cigarette. By the end of that flight, he would pull off the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. He demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He got them. And then, somewhere over the forests of Washington state, he opened the back door of a jet and stepped out into the storm. He was never seen again. No body, no suspect, no answer. They called him D.B. Cooper. Welcome to Curio Hour, where we uncover the strange, the unsolved, and the unforgettable. Today's story, D.B. Cooper. It was Thanksgiving Eve, the 24th of November, 1971. A man in a dark suit paid cash for a one-way ticket. Portland to Seattle, a 30-minute hop on Northwest Orient Flight 305. He looked completely unremarkable. A white man in his mid-40s. Dark suit, black tie, raincoat. He took the last row of the plane, ordered a bourbon and soda, and lit a cigarette. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. She slipped it unread into her purse. She assumed it was a lonely businessman's phone number. He leaned toward her and said quietly, "Miss, you had better look at that note." "I have a bomb." She wrote it. Then he opened his briefcase, just enough for her to see inside. A tangle of wires and red cylinders that looked exactly like sticks of dynamite. His demands were calm and precise. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. And 4 parachutes. All to be delivered when the plane landed in Seattle. For 2 hours, the jet circled Seattle, while on the ground the FBI scrambled to gather the ransom. 10,000 bills, each one photographed. And 4 parachutes. Through all of it, Cooper was unsettlingly calm. Polite, even. He knew the area well. He pointed out an Air Force base below and noted it was a 20-minute drive from the airport. On the ground in Seattle, he made the trade. 36 passengers released in exchange for the money and the parachutes. But he kept the crew on board. And then he gave his next set of orders. Fly toward Mexico City. Stay low and slow. Under 10,000 feet. Landing gear down. Flaps at 15 degrees. And leave the rear stairway unlocked. He was describing in exact detail the precise configuration a man would need to jump out of the back of a Boeing 727 in midair. Around 7:40, the jet took off again, trailed by 2 Air Force fighter jets that never once caught sight of it in the heavy cloud. He sent the last flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, to the cockpit and told her to stay there. The last thing she saw was Cooper tying the bag of money around his waist. At 8 o'clock, a warning light blinked on in the cockpit. The aft stairway had been lowered. Freezing wind howled through the cabin. At 13 minutes past 8, the tail of the plane suddenly pitched upward, as if a heavy weight had just left it. Somewhere over the black forests of southwest Washington, in freezing rain and total darkness, D.B. Cooper had stepped off the stairs and fallen into the night. He had no helmet, no cold weather gear. Just a business suit, a raincoat, a pair of loafers, and $200,000 strapped to his body. When the plane finally landed in Reno, the rear stairs were still hanging open. And the man was gone. The largest manhunt the FBI had ever mounted began that very night. Soldiers, agents, and volunteers combed the forests of Washington for weeks. They dragged lakes with a submarine. They photographed the flight path from a high-altitude spy plane. And they found nothing. No parachute. No money. No body. It was as if the man had vanished into thin air. He had left behind only a handful of things on that plane. A black clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and a nearly perfect mystery. The questions began at once. Who was he? And could anyone possibly survive a jump like that? Some agents were certain he had died. The conditions were brutal. The darkness total. The odds of survival almost none. But others were not so sure. He had known too much. The aircraft, the parachutes, the terrain. Whoever he was, this was no amateur. For 9 years, the case went cold. And then in 1980, a clue surfaced. From the bottom of a river, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand on the bank of the Columbia River when his fingers closed around something. Bundles of cash, rotting $20 bills still bound with rubber bands. $5,800. And the serial numbers matched the ransom exactly. It was the first and only piece of Cooper's money ever found. But instead of solving the case, it only deepened it. Because the bills had washed up their years after the hijacking. And to this day, no one can fully explain how they got there. Over the decades, the FBI chased more than 1,000 suspects. A special forces paratrooper, an airline employee, a copycat hijacker who pulled off almost the exact same crime. Years later, analysts found rare particles of titanium clinging to his abandoned tie. A clue that he may have worked in aerospace, perhaps even for Boeing itself. But not a single suspect was ever confirmed. Every promising lead in the end dissolved into nothing. Finally, in 2016, after 45 years, the FBI did something it almost never does. It closed the case, officially and forever unsolved. To this day, Cooper is the only skyjacker in American history to commit his crime and get clean away. Maybe he died in that forest, his secret buried with him. Or maybe he walked out of the woods, dried himself off, and disappeared into an ordinary life. Either way, he beat the FBI, the Air Force, and the odds. And he left behind nothing but a clip-on tie, a riddle, and a name that was never even his.